Hello, I'm Don Mitchell. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me today as I share with you some observations about the 2000% solution, the book that teaches you how to accomplish 20 times more with the same or less time, effort, and resources. Now, in doing this, today I'm going to focus on the chapter in the 2000% solution that addresses the bureaucratic stall. Now, I don't know anyone who, even including those who work for bureaucracy, who likes bureaucracy. And I had an experience just last night that reminded me of how annoying that can be. My wife and I are about to go to a concert, and we expect to arrive at a time there won't be any parking available. And I was delighted to get an email that told me that I could prepay and reserve parking for that night. And I said, wow, this is great. So I clicked on the link and I was brought to a site. And I couldn't make the site work, but I had a notice I could call somebody. But I thought, well, I'm a grown up. I can make this work. But eventually, I realized that I had to establish an account. To establish an account, I had to fill in about 37 lines. And when I got to the one about us putting in a password, as usual, after I put in the password that I liked, a little note came on saying, "Oh, the password has to have these characteristics." So I erased the password I put on password with those characteristics, and sent me a note saying I hadn't followed the rules. Well, I had followed the rules. So I futzed around for a while and finally got a password in that they would like. And then I typed the same one down below. And of course, it said that the two didn't match. Well, of course they matched, but when I tried to do this now and correct the second one, so hopefully it would match, I lost everything on the page that I'd already entered, all 37 lines. So I went back, got the same page up, put the 37 lines in, had the same problems, eventually got an account. As soon as I got the account, I then began looking for a parking space. Well, I came up with a list of 10 that were available. So I said, great, I'll pick the one that I most want to go to. And I picked it, and somehow when I clicked on the link, nothing would happen. So I did this 4 or 5 times, going through the process, and it would just sort of stop in the middle, saying that there was no special event then. Of course, I was going to a special event right across the street, so that was a ridiculous answer. Anyway, to make a long story short, eventually a message popped up on a screen that I didn't intend to get to. It said, "Oh, by the way, that was sold out." Well, it turned out all 10 of the available spots were sold out. So I realized now I had just wasted 45 minutes trying to get a parking spot. And even if I'd had to park a mile away, I could park faster and walked in less time than this bureaucracy had accomplished. So I'm sure you've had the same experience in your own context, but that's just my latest funny story. But lest we think bureaucracy is just masses of people and all kinds of unnecessary information that doesn't lead to any benefit, I think another perspective is to think about bureaucracy as simply a mindset that means that the people on the other side don't care how much trouble we have to go to. They don't care how long we have to wait. And they will make no effort or minimal at most effort to try to deal with the problem for us. So, in the course of having this whole experience, I began to realize, well, perhaps I should have called that number, and maybe they would have, walked me through this thing, and I would have saved some of the 45 minutes before I found out. So maybe these people weren't quite so bureaucratic as all. Maybe I was just kind of resistant. Anyway, so imagine now we have a small organization where there's one person who owns the company. Everybody has to deal with that person, but this person is very busy. Well, if this person is very busy and his or her schedule is more important to her or him than satisfying customers, then dealing with this one person may feel very bureaucratic. And in the course of doing so, the result may be the same as if there were 37 seemingly unnecessary steps required to find out that there were no parking places available. I think another step is the fact that many processes have long gaps in them, long gaps when nothing happens. I remember working in the steel industry in the 1960s. That sort of dates me, doesn't it? And one of my jobs was to keep track of where the steel was. Well, in those days, steel was done by batch production in huge blast furnaces. And so, obviously didn't produce a batch every day of every type that everybody wanted. So there's always some delay waiting for the batch to be done. The second thing that happened, of course, was there were a lot of steps. You had to make the batch, and then you had to actually roll it out, and then you had to, maybe you had to heat it to anneal it to make it stronger, and then perhaps you had to do some other things that would make the whole steel do its results. For example, if it needed to be in coils, then you had to roll it up. And if the coils needed to be nice and neat, then you had to slit the edges. And if it sat out in the rain until it got rusty, then somebody had to rub the rust off and so forth. And these things, happened all the time. So, make a long story short, it was about 6 weeks. But of those 6 weeks, there was probably only something happening with that batch of steel about, you know, 3 hours of those 6 weeks. So really, what was typically happening is, something would be done with the steel for a little while, then it would sit until it was convenient for somebody to do it because of whatever reason and so forth. And the reason I know that is one time a customer had lost and really an incredibly important lot of steel, and they desperately needed a replacement. And we were able to actually produce and deliver them that steel in just a few days. So it didn't have to take 6 weeks. But the system was set up bureaucratically, so people just would have to order their steel, 6 weeks ahead of time if they wanted to get it. And tough luck to them if mistakes were made and it didn't get done. So fortunately, we moved past that to the day where now in many cases, you can have a customized product and you can have it made and shipped really within an hour. And in fact, we talked about an example like that in the 2000% solution. So, in your own life, whether personal activities or your business or your job or things you do as a volunteer, where are there unnecessary delays? Where are there unnecessary steps? Uh, and going back to my parking lot example, they should have had some way for me to find out that there were no spaces before I messed around doing all of that nonsense, trying to get an account with them. You may have similar issues, sort of where you are. Now, there's some reasons for inertia in doing this. One reason for inertia is most people aren't very good at thinking about ways to improve processes. In other words, to replace one process with another or to simplify an existing process. For example, I've worked with some very big companies over the years who've done this. And I remember one company had 14,000 employees at the time. And yet, for processes that they wanted to improve in their financial operation, they could only find 5 people who were good at doing this. So these 5 people got worked to death because every time a process needed to be changed or could be improved, the same people did it. So obviously, if you have a big organization, you're going to need to invest in either hiring some people with this skill, or you're going to have a training activity that sort of develops that. Second thing is, not everybody's going to be happy in your organization if you make the changes. For example, in that small company where the CEO, founder, and person who identifies with the company, perhaps whose name is on the door, likes the fact that everybody has to wait on her or him before any action is taken. Really, that's part of what makes it really great to be the leader because you get to call all the shots. And even if customers get better service, that may not be as egotistically satisfying for that entrepreneur, that founder. And I think another example that we can sort of see, of course, is the person who, in these days of downsizing, right sizing, streamlining, whatever you want to call it, but basically, trying to push people out the door who have higher incomes. These people realize that having a process that requires them to do their little thing that is not well documented by anybody else means that they have some job security. So the last thing they're going to want to do is to give up doing their little thing. Unless they happen to be about 2 weeks from retirement, in which case they may not want to learn something new. And in fact, when I talk with my friends who are retired, which I'm not, they all tell me that one of the main reasons they quit was there was going to be some new computer program they were going to have to learn, and they just didn't want to learn another new computer program. Lest you think that that's a strange reaction, I'm continually struck by the number of people in my family who cannot figure out how to download Skype so that we can have video discussions, over the internet. And downloading Skype is about as simple as clicking on a link and then establishing an account in fewer than 37 lines, and then hitting a button that says initiate call. So it's really quite interesting to me that I think almost any excuse will be taken to avoid trying to overcome what feels to the person who is supposed to be benefited from whatever's going on should be done. And I think we see some very good examples of this. I was at a food bank recently as a volunteer, and the person who ran the food bank was really very well organized. I mean, she really knew what she was doing. She's been doing this for over 30 years, and she's a lovely person. I enjoyed serving with her. But she has a hang up. She doesn't want anybody to get an extra can of anything unless she gives the permission. So she's sort of like that founder. And so as a result, perhaps 100 people showed up to pick up food, and they've been qualified in the appropriate way. But they all had to sit quietly until she gave them permission to come up and go through, past the food and pick out what they wanted. And she would actually follow them around. And if they took one can too many, not only had we as volunteers been trained not to let them have that can, and she would kind of chew us out if they got the can, but she would sort of take it out of their shopping basket and put it back in. Now, she may have had good reasons for that, but clearly the net result was is that people were waiting over an hour to get their food, whereas if they just could have queued up and wandered through with signs that said you can have one can of this or whatever the rules were, the whole thing could have been done in 15 minutes. And I don't think it was an ego thing for her. I think she was just really trying to be a good steward, of the resources. But regardless of the reason, the effect is the same. And I suspect that, she could have used some other process to have eliminated people taking too much out, and perhaps such as, having one final check at the door or something like that. And if people knew there was one final check at the door, they probably wouldn't have taken, more than they should have taken really in the first place. And perhaps if she really think that was important, she could have been that person, But it was interesting because I guess some people kind of had a reputation for taking one can too many, and so she'd warn us, "Watch out, this one takes two sometimes." So it was kind of interesting, but another kind of lively example of the bureaucratic stall. So just be sure that, and as you think about bureaucracy, that you don't just think about the times when it causes you a problem, but think about the times when you cause other people that problem. And then as you're sensitive to that, find ways to eliminate it, ways that will make it better for everyone, including you and those who are concerned about, being treated with due respect, as well as those who really do like to call the shots, as well as those who are concerned about job security. So that's enough for now. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you again in the near future. So take care. Bye-bye.